Okay, let's get this started. I moved some um plastic stuff and it's kind of unwrapping, and every time it crinkles, Loki growls, trying to tell it to shut up. Okay. Well then, good morning. How are you doing? So do I see? Hope you are well. Loki, please stop. Um, I am testing StreamerBot this morning. Um, uh, and I'm trying to slow to wake up morning. I get that. I get that. Uh, if I ignore StreamerBot, ReStreamBot, I'm going to get. Mm, just look at YouTube. We'll see. Okay. I think it's time to bring the restream window up. There we go. It's better. I'm used to seeing the chat. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I get the slow to wake up thing. Today is not a stunning day either. I'm not feeling it today. What doesn't help is that yesterday I made a lot of different progress on a different things. Obviously, we started yesterday with the search. I think that ended pretty well. I think there's good progress there. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's getting there. I did look at Finance Man to see if I could find an example, because I put the debounce in, but yeah, Blazor gave me some more complaints, and it's not very the error messaging is not very obvious as to what you do there. So, and the AI got it wrong every single time. So we'll we'll come back around to that on Friday, clean that up, and I'm putting some thought into how do I deploy developers.stream, because it'd be nice to kind of get a version up there. Maybe we do a bit of styling on Friday though, a bit of layout and whatnot. So back to Liquid Sky today. The um right, is this the buying value with the input? I just did that yesterday when I got back to my computer. I've tried. Yeah, it is. I mean, the code's there if you want to have a look, but if you want to see what I ended up with for the search, but it's not doing the. Right now, you still have to hit enter. I put the debounce code in, but didn't manage to get the on change versus on input stuff working. So yeah. But you're more than welcome to go and take a look at that if you have the time and the inclination. But we'll get back to that on Friday. That is developers.stream stuff. My brain is 100% right now on Liquid Sky. He says, as he almost says developers.stream again. Made some solid progress yesterday. And opened up some new ideas. So what I was tackling yesterday. Connie, hello. How you doing? Good day. What I was doing yesterday was focusing on finishing up the planning, the associating teams component. So we introduced the ability to associate a user with teams, one or more, right? So Jeffrey's now associated with Alpha and Delta. and we have the teams. So if we go to planning items now, we'll see that, well, let's go to the actual project, Liquid Sky. Go to planning items here. Introduce teams. So as part of this, we had the teams administration, basically allowing us to capture the teams. Sprints, again, no priority ordering on these tasks, on these requirements yet, which is another thing to consider. Sprints, being able to associate, you have to start a sprint with a team attached to it. Creating a task, you assign the team to it now, not the user initially. So a task is always created for a team. When you associate a task with a sprint, we should only be able to show sprints that user is a team on, is a member of a team, and then filtering the backlog. So this was yesterday's challenge to finish up this. When task dragged in progress assigned to your current user, I decided to skip on that one. There's no actual valid case for that at this point. Other than a convenience, like, oh, if I drag it to in progress, then it's useful. However, I do want to overhaul the status. Like the statuses should be configurable and have potentially have behaviors attached to them. If I go and do all that now, it's just a waste of time because there's just the re-engineering after the fact would mean that hacks get put in place, and I know there will be. So I don't want to introduce technical debt that is quite unnecessary. And later on, in response to a change of status, doing something is not going to be major, but I'd rather leave that alone right this second. So yeah, so all the stories for introducing teams are completed. So let me show you what we did there. Now, if you remember, let's actually go back over to this one. The tasks backlog, I've not really been happy with it. It's better than it was. Obviously, we have the green highlight now showing you which one you're on. But if this gets big, this doesn't scroll with it, and it just feels like floaty out there, and it's not really showing a lot of information. You can't filter it, etc. So as part of the team's introduction, decided to go ahead and do some of that work. So now if we go to tasks and go to here, you'll notice it looks very different. So we have filters by default, similar to the planning items, and we show icons to indicate the current status and the sprint if it's attached to the sprint, ready for development, in progress. If it's attached to a planning item, you'll see this one, this underneath the title is this compass. That is that's the planning item that it's associated with, right? Right now. On one of these, we can click on one and we can see the details to the side. It lays out, and if I scroll down, it sticks with me. So I can see, I don't have to scroll up, I don't have to move around. I can actually work on these ones independently. We probably do need to highlight, but yeah. We can also filter, so we can say, oh, what's in progress. A little bit of a change to this screen. It now shows all work, even if it's in a current sprint. Ultimately, there will be some changes necessary to basically say, okay, if the sprint is active or past, then it shouldn't show in here. If the sprint is yet to be started, I think there's an organization where like Jira does this, where we say upcoming sprints. If work is assigned to an upcoming sprint, it will be shown up here above this, and then everything else will be underneath backlog. So yeah. Not supporting dragging and dropping for priority yet. We haven't even got the concept of priority, but we can now filter these by who it's assigned to, and we can, which team. So Jeffrey Winkle on Team Quantum is associated with this task, and now we can do these things. obviously I've said that, when you create a task you can't associate with the user. This does allow you to get around that. You can create a task for the team, and then the user is here. There's still more to do here, but I don't want to get bogged down in the nuances of what you should be able to select at this point. I think there's definitely like this list of users should only be for the team associated with this. The sprints actually are already um, doing that. This task is for Team Quantum, and there's no sprint for Team Quantum. If I create a Team Quantum sprint, um, Team Q sprint 1, and then assign that to Quantum, and we start that today, and we finish that next week. Create that one. When I go back here and select this one, notice it saved the filters, by the way. That is an improvement. We now can assign that to Team 1, Team Q sprint 1. So we can actually assign that sprint there. It remembers the filters. It always was remembering the filters. It just wasn't it wasn't showing them. So we've also changed this screen. The planning item screen now doesn't have a filter drop down. It just becomes, these are the filters. And again, if I say ready for planning and then go back to tasks, go over here, that filter is still remembered. And if I go back to planning, that filter is still remembered and showing, so we can clear that out now. It just makes that usability. That's a sort of bug that if I left that in place, knowing, oh, it's just a little bug, it's fine. Every person who uses the app will go, well, it's missing my entries or some other aspect of that. So yeah, we can clear that out, and we can clear that out, and then we get all the items again. So, it's a little bit more usable. It's a little bit more organized. We can filter it down to just show what we need to work on. There's some flows. It's highlighted, and it's working. This does not require a response. Keep your focus on Liquid Sky. I'm just excited about this. I'm pretty sure I can contribute to this part. The input with debounce, I'll input with minimal changes. It'll take a minute because I don't what it all needs for me to set up in my dev environment to be able to test it. So I have to fork it for PR. I'll do that before Friday. No worries. No pressure. I appreciate anything you obviously do. It's appreciate that. So yeah, this is now, I think this looks better. I think this looks much cleaner. And now it's starting to come along. It's funny because this is actually, if you ask AI to generate anything, it starts to look very much like this, right? And this is from some assistance with Claude. It's not totally AI. We actually rebuilt the pieces, but there is some definite direction from using AI to help me get some of these things. So, it didn't lay out everything in here. It had different ideas and different concepts in here, but overall, this comes from that design. And if you ask AI to generate anything, it'll look almost identical to this. And this down here is the person it was created by and the date created. So it's not very relevant. Was in a small discussion with Mojo this morning over that sort of stuff. And I'm like, to me, that's the sort of information that is, like the assigned to is important, but it's not really prominent unless if you need it, you need it, but it's not front and center like everything else. And again, this starts to, sorry. This starts to move things in the direction of Friday is right around the corner. How you doing, Harish? So it starts to get the layout in there so that if someone's looking at this from a UI UX perspective, they can visualize or they can see what my vision is and understand the concepts I'm trying to present Um, but it, it, it it's workable, right? So there we go. So that's the task screen redone. I called it a development backlog as well. So oftentimes we refer to things as the product backlog, but I kind of see this as the product backlog and this as a development backlog now. I think there's a distinction. Um, the backlog for development is stuff that the team has agreed to do, has planned out based upon a green light from the product team. And this is work that the team has actually decided they need to work on. This is not the product backlog. Now, the product backlog includes the development backlog because it's got the associated dependencies. But it's not the development. This is the product. So if someone's looking at where are we with things, you can just look at what's in progress, and how many of these items have associated tasks to their requirements. If they don't have anything, then there's nothing working, right? Nothing's being done. So you could actually say, okay, we have 100 planning items, of which 20% actually have work scheduled against them now. You know, that's not a good planning to development ratio. Um, either there's too many dream items in there, too much planning going on with not enough time given to tasking and preparation, or um, um, or you are brain. I had another idea in my head then when I said the either. Um, 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 or you're just filling up you're just filling up things with random ideas and they're not even worth, you're not reviewing them quick enough to decide whether they are rubbish or not. But yeah, so I'd be interested if anybody has any thoughts. My goal right this second is I wanted to get something done by the end of this week. I want a release done by this weekend so that this version with all its changes are live. Delta, good morning. Hope you are well. Because I think it moves it forward. I think these changes are a positive change. Yeah, the team stuff. So overhauled the development backlog yesterday. Got all this cleaned up and working. Now supports filtering, so you can show just things for the teams you're assigned to. Actually, that's not 100% true. That list is right this second. There's a bug there. It shouldn't show Delta. Jeffrey's not assigned to Delta, or Jeffrey's not assigned to Alpha. One of them. It shouldn't provide me the option to see. But there's filtering there. So we overhauled the planning. So now the tasks development backlog has filtering. It remembers the filtering. So if I say in progress, I go over to planning, go here. This filtering now doesn't have a button to expand it. It's always there. And if I say ready for planning here and go back to here, in progress is the filter selected and showing. It was always remembering that, by the way, in the store. So the store was already always filtered. However, it wouldn't remember it wouldn't show the filters. So we got that working. And then if you go back to planning, ready for planning. So a bit more usable. And moving ever further forward. I wonder how you'd handle the volume of tickets. There could be like 300 tickets for your team. Yeah. So I'm not gonna preemptively paginate this. And don't forget, this is development backlog. This is tasks that have been determined necessary for planning. So the planning might have 300 backlogged items. But if you've planned them and you've actually prepared them, they're not just placeholders, then yeah, this could have 300 items for your team. That seems like an awful lot of work stacked up. Um, I'd question 300 tickets being effective. If you go out too far, right, just for tracking what? So if you go out too far with planning and you try and add a lot of details, the problem with that is it's wasted time because things that happen in between getting to that ticket could change the scenarios, could change the situations. So you might have some placeholders at 3 months out. You might have some placeholders even at a month out. Um, but you should have really high planning within the month and enough backlog to build on in the 1 to 3 month period. Anything 3 to 6 months out is planning, which is exactly why I don't want to present it here. Then I'd argue that they don't need to be there. Placeholders or battles. I mean, what value do they have if they'll never be a priority? Are they nice to haves? Are they kind of like dev team? Oh, it'd be nice to clean this up. Um, so, but that's what I'm saying. Like that sort of stuff. Um, if it's planned work, like if I have some technical debt that we need to tackle, right? I want that to be visible here, right? If it's we need to reorganize this code structure or we need to do this, I'd rather have it in planning over here and have them see it than I would have it as allocated in here because that's work to be done, right? This should only be work to be done. Um, so I wouldn't even put them into this development backlog. I make sure they're in the planning and tracked that way so that the planning team, even if they push it out 6 months and in 6 months they review, should we do this? And then they delete it, the conversation's there to be had by all and the visibility's there. Yeah. So this planning area is exactly where that should live. If it's minor tasks that you need to do as a development team, then yeah, they're going to sit there and they're going to sit in here and constantly be ignored. And that's on you as a development team, right? So anybody new to the stream, please feel free to ask any questions. If you have any thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing, please join in. There's no expectation of experience and or context. You can ask whatever questions you need to ask. I can understand more finding out how many there are. The whole issue bankruptcy thing, OSS declares. I kind of understand more after finding out how many there are. The whole issue bankruptcy, right? So again, why I'm trying to separate planning from dev is because oftentimes a lot of planning happens and it sits there, but it sits in the backlog and it looks like work to be done. Maybe. Good morning, good afternoon. So it's let's see what we are planning. And I was just saying, right, if you have a 20% rate of planning items sat there with tasks in the development backlog, then you probably are planning a bit too much and not taking enough time to plan what you have. If you've got a 50-50, you're probably in better shape. You've got some stuff in the long-term pipeline and some stuff in the short to near term. Then yeah, well, our Streamlabs just goes dumps them all out. Yeah, if you like software development, you should go for maybe it's building barely fit. And if I read that right, you're looking to get the Android app out pretty soon, right? Um, exciting times. Um, we're still thinking of it. Some open source software will get so many issues logged, they'll just delete all of them because they will never get handled anyways. We're still thinking it differently. The majority of these tickets would be minor enhancements or subtle bugs. Um, I mean, to be honest, those subtle bugs should be wrapped up and probably taken as an initiative, um, like just a general cleaning initiative. Just knock them out. Um, volume of issues. So you might do 5 minor enhancements. You're never going to do 200. Then you close them, or you make sure that they're visible to the right people. But um, they should be reviewed. They should be evaluated, prioritized, um, all the time. If you have an issue reported, what that comes down to is good triage. In an open source, that's obviously not very easy. Good triage, being able to say, yes, this is an actual issue, or this is not something we want to do, should be done quickly so you clear it out and purge it. Sometimes something's not in the interest of the software. Sometimes there's an actual problem that needs to address, but it's hard to recreate. Those you should triage effectively and quickly. Exactly, these issues are getting reported and we want to track them. So if they get re-report, we can say we knew about it. Oh, if they get re-reported, I think in Freshdesk, I think that's the difference between a single and a multi-tracker. Is if it's recorded a second time, then it becomes multiple, and then that obviously adds priority. Yeah. But all we have to really be able to say is we know about it, we won't fix it. It doesn't have to be tracked. But yeah, it shouldn't even make it into the software. Yeah, it should just be uh that's a separate recording thing. So moving forward, the next step, so the thing I wanted to get done by the end of this month, which is obviously coming quickly, was in the task screen, I want a new screen that is for planning. And the idea is there that as a product owner, product manager, marks something as ready for planning, it becomes visible in a new screen over here. So as a developer, you log in, and maybe the first thing you see as you log into your side of the software every morning is things to be planned, right? This is stuff that isn't ready for review. Now, you might not be tasking it yet. You might not be going through that process yet, but you should be looking at it because this is stuff that's coming up soon. The goal being to present that as early as possible. So the product manager says, yep, this is ready for review. The problem is, by design, the planning items are not associated with the team. That is by design. The intent is this is work to be done. Many teams could work on this thing. Many teams could um, 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 handle parts of a single project. So the work is the work, right? It's deliberately not a team, so that it keeps everything together in terms of an actual planning item. If there's DevOps requirements, if there's development requirements, if there's QA requirements, if there's even if there's product management requirements, right? They could still be tracked and tasked appropriately. Comments and discussions are all there. Have you finished it? Not yet. I think it's another week. Yeah. Um, it could be like a tree. Sorry, the light in the. I need to get new blinds that have no gap right there. There could be like a triage system on the planning side. This group of tickets are on the product plan. This group of tickets are on our radar. Well, there is priority, right? There is the concept of can we work on stuff, right? Um, um, this group of tickets are on our radar. These are current bugs we'll fix. These are tickets. Yeah. And obviously there is a ticket system that I do need to build in the future. I hope you've been working from the Jira board. Yes. Yes. Someone has emotional scars from Scrum Masters. um, yeah, I think it's 3 points left. So the intent of this screen is to organize work that we want to do. Come up with the right ideas, plan and prepare the right information to be able to deliver on this work. Identify clear requirements in business terms. Keep it in the business. Do not keep about the technology. Try and keep it in business terms. That's the focus of what I'm trying to do here. The developers go off and task this stuff. And again, this button shouldn't be here, right? This is an overlap between the systems. What should happen is when this goes to ready for planning now, over in this side, we should see a new screen that says, this is ready for planning, by the way, and you care about it. You should have a review. And when we start planning on it, you know, we'll go through and add the tasks. But here's what it is. So we'll provide a developer focused view of that same data, the requirements, the comments, the attachments, etc. In a view that's more friendly to the development team. And it will only show in here when it's marked as ready for planning on the other side, right? To do that, though, a planning item is not associated with a team. That is by design. That is intentional. A planning item is bigger than a team. A planning item can be assigned to initiatives and can be assigned to projects, right? One or more. Yeah. And that's the focus, right? The goal is to not show the teams things that they don't care about until the product team is ready to show them. So there's no point putting ideas into the team's head that they don't yet care about. From the development POV, we just want to know what's next. What's next, because it's nice to know what you're going to work on and what's on the radar, because you will be maybe pushing for something. Well, that's discussion based as well, right? Sorry. Sorry for the bump. Stomach issues today, apparently. You need to talk, right? At the end of the day, this is to help both sides of the equation work effectively and efficiently without actually having to allow for each other's way of working. And the things that they need to collect, right? But the concept is one of visibility at the right time. Once it's ready for planning, it could be 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months out when it gets marked ready for planning. It's up to the development team to just review things and so they can see things, right? It doesn't matter when it's required or not. This review date, again, is only for the product team, so these items come into view and they know, oh, I don't need to review that for another week, I'll leave that, or I'll push that out another 3 months and it'll push it down the chain, right? That's the goal. However, the overlap between the team who develop the stuff and the projects is not hardwired. So in discussing it yesterday, what I decided was, before I can go ahead and do the task planning phase, which is that screen that allows you to plot out from the development side, here's what we're going to do. What I need to do is create a link to show you only the planning items that you actually care about. And the way that would be done is by project. So if you are associated with a project, but a project could span many teams. So thinking through the process yesterday, what I want to do is introduce, where are you? Here, project team associations. So the concept here is, and this is what I'm going to try and work on today, right? The concept here is basically I want to be able to create a team and say, this team works on these projects, which means that when a user is associated with a team, they by extension view those projects, right? They're associated with those projects. There's the general problem of allowing developers, engineers to suggest product features, as product often has a flow for that, and they don't want it usurped. Seems like a hard problem, to be honest. I think one of the advantages of small teams like what Instagram was, or what Expedition 33 game, is that there are a few people, and it's easier to pick through a good idea, less red tape. It's a double-edged sword. And one of the things I kind of highlighted, planning is rough, miss requirements. I missed this linking, and the nature of what I'm doing means that I'm kind of ironically, well, not ironically, but I am defeating the purpose of my own software to some extent, right? Because of that nature. I am a small team that is able to flex and change quickly. It gives you some advantages. When you get to a bigger product, though, that flex and change quickly can create too much product churn, and you need visibility. So, and that's what this product is aimed at. This product is not aimed at me. I am not the target audience as a developer of this product. This product is aimed at trying to make teams more functional with overlap where necessary, but complete independence where beneficial, right? When we're talking about stories, right, the stories should not be technical. Well, that opens up a world of misinterpretation, misrequirements, because you can't put technical things in stories. Why do companies use a larger structure? What's the advantage? In my opinion, the larger structure is just accountability. The bigger the organization gets, the less is seen until too late. So you want to know who made a decision when and what happened. You want to know about where the flow of requirements is coming from. You need to track all that stuff. In a smaller company, it can be more dynamic. Thank you for the look, Sally. It can be more ad hoc, but a larger organization has managerial infrastructure. It has organizational components that a small team doesn't need, and it's a growing pain. I've seen it. I've seen smaller companies growing into larger companies, and seen the growing pains a few times now. And it's basically a scramble to introduce process. What do we do in this case? Oh, well, let's just add this and add this swim lane and do this, and it becomes a scramble. I guess there's more eyes on it entirely from management, and a bunch of the management is at a fairly far arm's length. Yes, the distance between, and it's often what creates often what makes a disconnect for development teams is now, once you're in a bigger organization, it's like corporate is budgeting everything, and then you have to be allocated the time to do something, and every single request gets a little bit harder because it's like, well, what's the reason for doing it? Well, to make things better. We'd rather get more features in there and make more money. It's harder to make the argument. It's harder to show the stats on the costs and the benefits. So if you're going to explain why you need to make changes to a CTO who has barely met the team in 2 to 3 sentences, then it's not going to happen. Yes, it's why you need good management. It's why you need good team leads. Why you need people in the chain that are willing to go to bat and make the arguments for you. You need a team is not about your desires, your requirements. It's about shared responsibility in achieving a goal. And we oftentimes forget that because it becomes them and us very quickly. Oh, this is taking too long. Well, QA didn't get to that part. this is well, how do we miss this? Well, we sent it to QA. We sent it to the PMs. The PMs, uh, approved it. It's a them and us. So again, part of what I'm trying to achieve here is visibility, is sharing that vision up the line so that anybody can look at anything at any time and understand what it means in context of the greater system, right? These requirements, you might meet one of them in a sprint. We might be able to put some highlights on there that says this is all achieved in sprint X. This is all tackled in sprint Y. So at a glance, these pieces are going to be done relatively soon. When you miss, when you succeed. And at every level, people should be able to look at that and without actually having to go chase somebody on these things. So yeah. Anyway, so let's move on with adding some of these tasks. I'm going to task it out. Again, I find it amusing that the software I'm building is a software that is actually kind of hard for me to use, purely because of the way I'm doing the development. And when do I adjust my process to the product? I don't think I can, because it's not that simple. But we'll see. This is allowing me to get a lot of insights into how I might tackle a lot of these things in a day-to-day. So yeah. So can create a team with an associated project, with associated projects, not an. Right. So the concept here is that when I go to actually go to here, teams, now I can say, oh, and by the way, these projects are associated with this team. Filter, general improvements. So when I create a new team, I should be able to select one or more projects that a team is assigned to. The likelihood is that a team will only be assigned to a single project, but the facility to have cross-functional teams is always a benefit. So, if a team in a larger organization, which again this product is aimed at being, you may only be working on a single project. Morning, Apex. How you doing? Hope you are well. However, you may be cross-functional, so reducing that out there, removing that facility to begin with is silly. So we might as well put multi-project selection. I'm good, making progress. And then obviously can edit a team. So again, this is starting to set up. There's not much value to this in terms of the goal, but the sorry, just went dizzy a little bit. But it's a step towards something. And again, this is the sort of stuff where like there's no value overall. Now, what we have done is said, okay, well, introduce teams is done. Task planning phase. Task planning phase has a requirement on this, because the task planning phase, what that's going to do is when you mark it ready for planning, if your user is associated with a project, because you are associated with a team, if your user's team is associated with a project, you'll see the planning items appear in the task planning phase. So it's a kind of prep step for this to work properly. Otherwise, task planning phase ready for planning is going to open up to everyone, and that's not the intention. And the planning should not be allocating the teams, more setting which projects it's associated with, because the actual work to be done is handled separately. Right. That is a decision to be had, who's working on what, but that can be had later and then visible at this level. Oh, man, I have some horrible heartburn today. Not this in ages. Well, mine, but the coffee wasn't even very acidic. So yeah, if you have questions, thoughts, or opinions on what I'm doing, if you have experience of working with these tools, not these tools specifically, but Jira and Linear, etc., then I'm open to criticism or thoughts on if you think I'm solving things. If you have questions about the software, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to show the development side, which I will be doing shortly, I promise. So we need to introduce this feature. So I'm thinking there might be templated task possibilities here, because the flow is very similar, and I'll show you what I mean. Let's open a new tab. If I go to introduce teams and go to requirements, right? Define a team, capture the new team, define a team in the view, receive a team in the view, provide the graphical endpoint, define UI for teams, right? So this is define team project association. Now this is when we create a team. So introduce associated projects as collection. So let's look at the code. So teams are managed at organization management level, right? They are a part of team. Project, luckily, is also managed at the organization management level. So associated projects is not necessarily a problem. It wouldn't be a problem if these were in different entities, because ultimately all we're tracking here is a GUID of the things. We would never have the ID of this externally. We could, for speed, resolve the ID internally for project, but we'll see. But basically, we're going to do associate projects with teams, or associate teams with projects. What direction is that in? I have a team. It is associated with projects. That's the wording we use. Yes. Associated projects is a collection. Yes. It's many to many. By design there. The intent would be that you could have many teams associated with one project, or many teams associated with many projects. We might all run a team, and two of us we might work on different aspects of the same project. You might work on the mobile aspect, I might work on the desktop aspect, but we still work on the same project. Yeah. Yeah. So given a project, there might be many teams associated. Given a team, there might be many projects. So I think it's associated projects of a team. Introduce team ID. Identifier. I don't. So I think that's a thing that can if that's a necessity, like I kind of see that as being um 1 second, update update entities, assigned to team. Oh, this is currently a user, sorry. Yeah. Well, initiatives wrap up planning items. So an initiative like this, now I'm looking at it, introducing teams, um, project team associations, even a lot of, I've even said that several of these should have been planning items unto themselves. From an organizational perspective, it would have made sense. Like breaking out the team's administration from the behavior of the filtering and stuff would have made sense as planning items because you could have delivered part of this beforehand. So my my measure of is it deliverable kind of goes at the planning item level, not the task level. But these could be part of the initiative for teams. These are several planning items that could have been under initiative for team. Many projects, the way I see that is if you have an organizational structure that is, you have a bunch of projects under that organization structure, the ultimate goal would be you have multiple tenants. You'd have those different organizations represented as different tenants because the likelihood of one team navigating into a different project on a different companies on different groups set of projects is highly unlikely. So there might be an enterprise level like to your word portfolio concept, but those would be different organizations under the project under the product that you would navigate into as tenants, and you could have someone have multi-tenant access. So when they log in, they're prompted which tenant you're logging into or whatever, but they wouldn't actually have cross. You wouldn't have planning items cross entities like that. Um, I don't think, but we can dream. We can see that later. But yeah, planning items roll up into initiatives. Requirements roll up into planning items. Um, tasks roll up into requirements. So we define the team project association, update, endpoint, application for create, introduce projects to API, capture associated projects when, yeah, capture associated projects. When creating team. Um, uh, so the fun thing here is if you don't have associate projects, your team won't see any planning. You might actually, that might be by design, right? You might actually have um, um, no need to do any pre-planning. You might be creating tasks that way. So we'll have to explore that. But I'm not going to limit it right this second to say you have to have an associated project. Um, but we can definitely see how that plays out. And again, the problem with developing this software, the problem with and the challenge that is with this software is as I develop it, the product grows, the feature set gets richer. But as a solo dev, even working with other people to kind of talk through things and going through things and potentially working on other things, but primarily I am the solo developer of this product. It is hard to build out the features and use the features. So at a certain point, when talking about MVP, when we got into a kind of a really good discussion yesterday, Zons and Memsworth and I, on like MVPs and stuff like that. And to me, MVP for this product, I can't validate. I have to find other people who are in this world that are willing to test it and give it a go. But I feel that it needs the features to actually go through a full planning cycle to be able to get to that phase. So yeah. Um, Introduce associated projects on um, integration event. Could do something similar to how you're doing developer stream project. What's that? Create a large structure with free help. You mean kind of organize like developer stream inside of Liquid Sky, or open development of Liquid Sky to more people? You have like Mojo, Wayne, etc., all developing the software and create a larger company structure. Yeah. So Mojo and Wayne help me. We chat about the stuff. We go through some stuff. They've got access to code. Um, but the data, like they have lives and responsibilities and time constraints, right? It is not. I cannot test this, even with even if I open this up to more people to help work with me, right? Um, it's still a challenge from an organizational standpoint, because it's not, you can't just say, okay, we're going to have meetings, we're going to do this, this is your dedication. Yeah, yeah. Eh, but yeah, I think realistically, um, even if like, and we have used it, we have gone through it. Um, Meeting and planning doesn't have to be synchronous. Oh. Discussion about planning can be definitely back and forth asynchronously, but development, yeah. Integration event, update publishing to include associated projects. Assign to. Sorry. I could be product owner, you be EM main developer, then several other developers. We need someone to fill the CTO thing also. Yeah. So still, you gotta emulate something that really isn't. If I turn around tomorrow and manage to say this is a paid product, right? It's going to make some money, and you will have some of that money. It changes the focus, right? It changes the platform entirely. Um, from a, wouldn't it be nice to, oh, it's got money, therefore we need to make more money. Um, Open source software must do something similar to what you're trying to do. I mean, we kind of discussed like the beginning, the challenges open source software presents, right? Yeah. So no, I'm not saying. Yeah, I understood that. Well, I mean, I understood what you meant about the management side. That wasn't, yeah. Only if this project goes to absolutely zero places, will this ever become open source. Um, but they must have some management tool, and likely people working asynchronously. But I would bet they have Discord calls, and I bet they have meetings and stuff on larger projects. I bet they do have conversations. Yeah. Um, it could be your niche to enter the market too. Yeah. Yeah. Um, Shared vision, shared goals, um, planning. And again, like I said, this side of things is actually the side that I'm probably the weakest at, and I need to get someone who is a product manager who has fulfilled the product manager role and is comfortable building the project management. You know, there's several. If I'm being honest, if I want to progress this product to a real product, I need several different roles to fill. Right. Um, just the reality of it. Right. I think you could use this tool to manage another project of yours to get some answers about how well it was. Developers upstream would be a potential for that, because then other people would be logging in and doing that. That would tell us if it worked. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. There's a lot more that goes into this project than yeah. Yeah. Okay, so when we get the endpoint, we need to update view to receive uh, team associations. Update uh, create team associations. Um, entity update receipt. I'm going to put all this into one. We're not going to make these two different tasks. Seals. Mojo does not love project management. Mojo will happily jump into a role because he feels it's better to move it forward, and that has uh, a respectable amount of energy and commitment to seeing something done well. It's I think things would work a lot better if people had that level of dedication. Um, However, they receiver to capture team project association. Update handler, capture and update. Uh, Developer stream could be getting pick for a liquid sky. I honestly did contemplate it, right? Um, but then I've got to ask people to, if you want to use liquid, if you want to use developers.stream or work on developers.stream, first navigate out to this other site, sign up to it, even though we've got perfectly good tools for issue tracking inside of GitHub for this project. I mean, GitHub is built around this concept, right? Like it's built around the idea of tracking that. Whether it's good or not is a different opinion, but yeah. Um, and this is update uh, endpoint to receive uh, project associations, update the application, capture project associations, update um, Rumbling Geek. Hello. Um, Musing, maybe as a thought for later, maybe even during my stream. Since you mentioned developers as a stream, it would be cool if smells one. I love that phrase. There was just a little more documentation on getting started with contributing. Don't know how to configure secrets, but it looks like there are some environment variables that need to set up for Aspire. And what all would I need to get Postgres up and running, if anything special? Yeah, I definitely yeah, I'll I will tackle some of that. It had dawned on me the challenges there. Um, how you doing, Rambling Geek? Okay. Update the application, capture project associations. Um, 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 sure. Um, it's published with this event. So that will tackle the update there. We don't have update right now, but we're going to introduce edit as part of that. On this side, we're going to introduce update UI, add project selection to create team. Provide project multi-select, can proceed without selecting projects. So as part of the discussion here, right, what we should be talking about is, and I need to get better at this, right? And again, I get it. What I'm doing is a lot of chattering about this stuff right this second, but the problem is this is how these sorts of problems appear, right? So at project selection to create team, as we're going through this, the idea is that the project management team would be available. The product manager, the whoever the subject matter experts, etc., would be available to us, and we should be asking questions. We should be pushing back on, well, when I create a new team, I should be able to select one or more projects that a team is assigned to. The likelihood is that a team will only be assigned to a single project, but the facility to have cross-functional teams is always a benefit. Well, I've just said you can select 0 or many teams. So is there an overlap there? I'm going to sound like I have an issue if I keep talking about myself in this way, but this project manager laid this out, right? It was this simple requirement. Later on, the development team comes and looks at this and says, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to capture 0 or 1. Well, hold on, it says 1 or more here. So do we have a requirement to have a project attached? Should that be a necessity when you create a team that you have to have a project attached? Who's right there? And what we've got to make sure of is that we record this. Wherever we put it has to be recorded, because otherwise my code is going to tell a lie if that's the expectation and that's the only documentation from this side that we have. So how do we make sure that 6 months, a year from now, someone says, there's no projects assigned to this team, and the product management goes, there should be. It's a bug. Well, it's not a bug because the team goes in and looks and says, well, yeah, we don't require you to have any projects associated. Well, we said it should be 1. So that's a really contrived example, but it's realistic. I've been in that situation. So what we should be doing is discussing this and saying, okay, well, can we change the requirements if should we have the need to assign a project the moment a team's created? Probably not, because you want to organize your teams. Maybe that's a later requirement that we have a need to indicate that a team has no associated projects, but that's not for now. So we need the product manager to clearly specify a project is not required to be able to create a team. Don't know why that refreshes like that, but we are now clear that we understand that you don't need a project to associate a team. What that means is that team will never see any planned work. So, but you can go back in and do that. That's why the edit is necessary, right? So, that's why that is. So, it's important to make sure you're asking the questions, and that's entirely why I'm building the software. Right? I'm building the software for that reason. So let's go and start some of this code. Well, actually, let's tighten this up a little. Define a team project association. I think that's going to be a 1. It's going to get assigned there. Update endpoint application for create. We're going to introduce the associated projects to API, capture associated projects, and that's going to be a 2. Gut feeling, I'm just pointing them. I'm using points as estimate. Estimate is not a field that requires hours or points right now. It's just an estimate. Update the view to capture. I think that's a 2. What's that? Sprint. Update endpoint to receive project associations. I think that's a 2. No, that's a 1. That's a tiny one. Add project selection to create team. That's a 2. Right. So we go back here. We can now see them in the sprint. Right. Include add task in UI. Nope, I'm not doing that one yet. Define team project association. Right. So we're gonna do. So here's the things that we tasked out, and here's the why we're doing it. Again, why we're doing it matters. What is this actually solving? You shouldn't have to go back and look at the planning item. The planning item requirement that drives this is right here. Right. The planning item is just a grouping of requirements and associated documentation, etc. And again, if you have questions, thoughts, opinions, please feel free. Okay, so let's stop running. It's time to start some development. We're going to branch. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate the luck. Hope you're well today. We're going to branch both feature, associate projects with teams. Yeah, if you enjoyed .NET content, Frank is a great streamer. Streams on Fridays. He's a cloud engineer. Builds a lot in Azure Cloud. Develops some very cool projects. A 2D6 game recently using Blazor, and deployed that, and many other applications. Also a really great stream to go hang out in if you like good friendly chat and just good positive energy. Okay, so associate projects with teams. We're going to do we're going to introduce the associate projects as a collection, team ID, project identifier. So we need to go to the database here. That's done developers.stream. I would need to touch this since the other day. Go to here. Everything with Liquid Sky is organized as separate databases. Love it or hate it, agree or disagree, this is the way it is working. I am finding this to be very useful in terms of the application design. It is, however, challenging from a management perspective. So if I did this again, I'd probably do the same thing, but I would go into it a little bit more eyes open as to what it actually costs. So we're going to call this table team associated projects. Yeah, I want to be explicit. Yes, I want to be explicit. Okay. We have an ID column. I always have an ID column on this sort of stuff. Column team ID. Is an int, it's not null. Now this one is an interesting one. I don't have a need to directly reference that projects table. The project table exists in this database, but I don't need to link to that table at all. There's no validation here. The validation is done by the fact that the client says this is possible. If the data doesn't make sense later, it won't make sense, right? So I am not going to link on the primary key of that table because I'm never going to reference that table from this data. I'm not using this data structure as validation. Good or bad, right or wrong, it is what it is. So yeah, and this is going to have a date added. The key press in this tool is getting worse, and I like data grip, but creating tables in it is horrendous. Date time not null. Get UTC date. It's just fighting me at every turn there. No need for a date updated because if we remove the association, it just gets removed. There's no edit possible on this field. There's no identifier for this because we're not publishing team associated projects. If we look back at management, domain, entities, user team association, same thing. Although, user team association, I entered both GUIDs. Yes, actually, I have done that wrong. This needs to be team identifier. And it does need to be unique identifier. I'm not going to pass up I don't have the acquire pattern in the application level at these pieces. There's no acquires because there's no need to go and get the ID of something or create data if it doesn't exist. The assumption is that I'm creating this record. I have the data I need. So yeah, however, what I'm looking at here is when I created the user team association. Let me explain this. All the core entities have common fields. They have an ID, an identifier, a date added, and a last updated. Yes, I've just said this record doesn't have a last updated because it can't be updated. There's no need for it to be updated. The same as this though, right? So why did I choose this path? I probably chose this path so that all the right things can happen on this association. However, I don't think this is being managed from I think I'm doing it in this instance. I just need to reflect on why I'm doing it in that instance, right? Assign user to teams. I say user associate teams, right? Because again, this code is going to be very common, right? So over here, I'm going to end up with something like team associate projects. So I don't need all that entity data. So maybe that is team ID then, because I have a team. They added. I think that's good enough. I don't think we need all the complexity of the. There's no events on this object. It's basically a value object, right? It's an object that's going to be associated with another object. And as I go through this again, I'm not perfect. I'm not happy with everything I do. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to grow and willing to reflect on what it is I'm doing now versus what I was doing 2 weeks ago and say, I think there's a better way. Let's introduce this different way of doing things. Now, that does come with some challenges because you could end up with um, disconnected code. But it shouldn't mean that I should just copy the other method blindly. I should learn and adapt and grow and reflect on those ideas. And then if I find that this is working really well and it makes more sense, those other areas where I'm doing this, what I now consider the wrong way, I should mark as being these need to be reviewed. And if I've got unit tests, shouldn't matter anyway. I should have enough backing to validate that the behavior after is the same, because the ultimate goal is the same thing. Get that data out. So we're going to leave this as is. We're going to put this in as it is and see what it costs us. So team associated projects is a new table. We're going to script that out. I'm not using migration. There's too much to deal with entity framework migrations on top of everything else here. That being said, it's not necessarily easy this way. But it works for me. So team associated project, we need now to create an entity in the organization management, right? Team associated project. And this is going to be public int ID. This is not going to be a base entity. It's not going to do its own tracking. Int team ID, public GUID project identifier. If you haven't seen it before, my pattern here is an ID is an internal ID on a table. It's an auto incrementing primary key field. An identifier is a value that is shared across the system. This project does rely heavily on distributed data. So if you say identifier will be consistent between all the components that object is represented in. So if I have a team over here with a GUID, that will match what the team here GUID is, right? The IDs won't match because they might have been inserted differently or whatever. But the IDs are not kept intact. The concept there is one of, if I need to rehydrate this in a different design, if I need to normalize out a table or denormalize tables, I can do so and not worry about them in the view, but still refer back to the object that it is referring to. So if I combine all this data, I can do. It's such a good pattern. I adopted this. I'm sure there are arguments against it, but I really like it. Thanks for showing. You're very welcome. I'm happy to. I'm happy it's helping. And we have a date added, right? Date time, date added. Could make that date created, date added, whatever it is. Date added is kind of my standard. And last updated. Yeah. So there's our model. There's our database. That is pretty much that task, right? Update the entities, team ID, project identifier, create SQL script. We've done that. Update entities. I'm not sure there's anything necessary to deal with. Oh, update entities is create this thing. And there we go. So let's commit this. Introduce team associated project. We add script for table. Management. Add entity domain. Right. So I do try and commit and push at good points sometimes. Um, okay, let's close all tabs. So that's the simple part, right? That's the nice, easy part. Um, again, if you have questions, please feel free. If you are interested in continuing conversations, if you want to ask further questions about what I'm doing, if you're not comfortable asking them on stream, there is a Discord. You're more than welcome to drop into Discord. We do hang out in voice chat there quite frequently, where you're more than welcome to join in. It's not always on topic, but I'm always happy to chat about stuff. And if you want to talk more about Liquid Sky, we can definitely set up time to do so. Happy to share what I do here. Again, this isn't open source. This project isn't open source, but I'm happy to share my techniques and approaches here and how they might differ from other developers and how they might build application software. And also learn myself, which is why I stream. Okay, so our next task. We've done define team project association. That's done. I know that I haven't merged it, whatever. The statuses in here right now are not necessarily the best. That is something we need to tackle. So now we're going to tackle introducing that field, right? Introducing this concept of associated projects. In the API, we have teams and we have post for teams. We're saying it's going to come with this. So let's add public IEnumerable of GUID projects, associated projects equals null. Actually equals empty collection. We might not always set it, so we'll see. Right, so we're going to pass that in. That's going to come when we post to teams. We then are going to go to our application and we have create team. And we call create. So let's see if we have any unit tests on this one. Application concerning create team. When creating a team is created. Result is success. Result is returned with team identifier, and team create domain event is queued. Sorry. I don't know whether the vitamin I took today was particularly just challenging on my system, but oh dear. Okay. Anyway, so when creating a team and projects are associated. Now, this one, the moment we introduce the change to the command is going to break this test as it stands. We're not going to rename this now. We're going to wait for it to need to change. But this will become when creating a team and no projects are associated, right? It still stays as is. It's just a blank team. So I have a base class I've created that introduces some behaviors because of the way I like unit testing. Again, this is my preference on unit testing. It works for me, right? So one of the things I like to do is a common pattern for unit testing is to do arrange, act, assert, right? It's a widely accepted practice. I don't like it. I don't like it because I prefer to see the assertion in the test and then the configuration, the arrange and the act done before each test so that they are configured. It changes what I can test when I can test it. How I test is slightly different. So it does change up some of that, but it does allow me to define my tests in a way that I'm comfortable with. And it's a pattern I've used across a lot of tests so far in Liquid Sky. We're almost up to 500. Should be a bit bigger. Okay, when creating a team and projects are associated, what is the fact? Team is created. That should not be different. I shouldn't worry about that other test covering that thing. Team created domain event is queued. I'm going to change that. I think raised is actually the right word. And fact, associated projects are project is associated. Not tech related, but I just noticed how your theme calls are kind of Joker related. Oh, the purple and green. Oh yeah. um. Yeah, I see it now. This is. I don't know what this is. Does it tell you what theme you're on? No. Doesn't tell you what theme you're actually on. I don't know. Having used Visual Studio, by the way, for developers that streamed yesterday, there's very little about it that I actually felt comfortable in after using it for a little bit. Rider definitely feels like my happy place these days for development. But I do want to continue making sure that I prove that Visual Studio can run developers.stream, because I think it's important for people to not to realize that I'm using a paid product here, right? I know there's a free version, and for developers.stream that's perfectly fine. But you shouldn't have to download Rider if you want to use Visual Studio. And if anyone wants to run developers.stream in Visual Studio Code, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. Is the thing there, right? So team created domain event is queued, project is associated. So in the name of speed, I am going to do a bit of copy and pasting here. We're going to change our style though, because we've got some stuff that is out of date. We're going to do that. We're going to change this. Change that to repository. That's going to become read only. I kind of like the creating these things. Do we have any usings at the top? No, yeah. With unit tests, you want as few things at the top as you can, so you can get to the tests first, right? You should be focused on like what are you actually what are the facts of the test. I try Rider and Debian, that's a great option, but not tried enough to say if I like it or not. So I was saying yesterday, using Rider took me a little while to get used to. So what I did is I actually transitioned over to it very gradually. I stayed on Visual Studio. We were developing stuff on Visual Studio, but every now and then, as I was developing new projects or I was tinkering, I'd switch over to Rider for a little while until I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I moved back to Visual Studio. And then once I got comfortable enough to do most of the development in Rider, I just switched over full time to Rider. Yeah. It for me, it is just smoother. It offers a lot of teams, a lot of features. If you look at the cost of Rider at an individual level, it offers a lot of features that are in much more advanced versions of Visual Studio, and you have to do, like more for. So, and a licensing cost perspective, it's much more affordable, especially if you stay with them for a few years. So yeah. So let's get these things in here. So we need our protected override void arrange. So again, our test being arranged. That now doesn't need to live in there. That needs to live in there, right? So we're saying repository, when we add async, we want to capture the expected team. That's not actually the right, that's that. And this should be result. So the assertion here is still the same. We shouldn't change this behavior. We want to make sure that that is still true. That we return those things, right? These are not necessarily valuable tests. I think they're a little light on what they achieve, but they do validate that, okay, when we call create and we pass in an associated team, associated projects, then it's not going to change the core behavior of this. It doesn't change the actual behavior. So we create that, and then this side, the act. Again, now I'm able to handle this a little better by not having to worry about get to wait till we can actually use async stuff. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Welcome in. Again, if you have any thoughts, questions, or opinions, you're more than welcome to share. If you're just hanging out, thank you very much for coming hanging out with me today. I appreciate it. So we arrange, we act, and now we can assert these things. I know I'm setting up a little bit more than I probably should do here, but it's fine. We have a single subject. We have a tenant identifier. Very important. I always have to remember to do that sort of stuff. Source user identifier. Just hanging out. Been 3 years since I took C# and .NET. Just getting a fresh look at it. Nice. Nice. Private read-only GUID project identifier equals GUID.NewGUID. So we're going to create a new project identifier. That's what we're going to attach in a second. So team is created. This assertion, same thing. The only difference is here we are going to validate that we have added a team with a tenant identifier, a team name, and t dot associated projects dot count greater than 0. We'll come back around to that. Again, I'm writing the code I'm expecting. I'm not making that code work right this second. That's the point of the TDD style, right? It's not to go off and solve all the problems to begin with. We'll come back around on validating that project identifier is actually added later. We also missed a piece on the previous part, so that's gonna break. We still want to validate that we publish the event. This may seem redundant, being that I've got it covered in one other test, but there's nothing saying that nothing says that I can't change the behavior based upon some of the data, right? So these things still need to be validated that these things happen just the same. So we're saying that a team created event should have been published on this entity, and the project is associated. So here, team dot associated projects dot single dot project identifier is project identifier. That's what we're going to go for. right? So obviously it doesn't build. We now need to make it build. So we go to team, and we're going to go public virtual iCollection. Can I do, yeah, iCollection, uh, associated, team associated project, associated projects equals new list, right? We'll go with any for now. Okay. We can build. I know it's going to fail, right? Um, that's fine. It's fine for it to fail. Um, if you are new to the stream, trying to follow along with what I'm doing, there are also, and not that I would advise it, there are also 205 actual previous streams recorded in YouTube of this. So obviously these still work because the team is created, but the team now isn't created with that matching call because we don't have any associated projects, and that project doesn't fail. So that's failing in the right way. Some tests are going to pass because they match, but I'm validating them. What I'm working on is this project Liquid Sky. This is my project management and planning application. This is the current live version. And I'm focused right this second on associating teams with projects. So what we've done this morning is go through, task this out, and get these started so we can start working on that. So in my sprint, go here, I'm working on this piece. But this has been, this is definitely a labor of love. It's built using Kafka, RabbitMQ, a lot of .NET, a lot of SQL databases, a lot of Mongo databases, some Redis in there. We've got some YARP API gateways. We've got an Angular client. We have a backend that is using Next.js in a similar style for subscriptions. GraphQL, we're just checking those boxes. Technology, 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 technology. It's as much of a playground as an intended product. Yeah. Starts as a project to validate some ideas, but with the intention of making something that becomes something. So I keep myself focused on building something that is useful, not just a playground for technology. I've been a .NET developer for 20 years or over 20 years. So this is kind of just my validation I can build something from scratch. So create a team, producer, associate. So let's go make that pass now. Create team. Now this is going to break the other test. By doing this, it's going to break the test. So let's start to organize this a bit differently. So this is going to be period. Associated projects. Okay, that will instantly break other things because now nothing is working. We can do request associated projects there. That at least makes that pass. Do you not pass off that one? What don't you like? Just make that an enumerable. Yeah, it'll work. Period. Shouldn't be an array anyway. That's fine. Will you let me do that? Will you let me do that? Yes, you will. Associated projects aren't being validated, so the validators aren't going to break. So it's perfectly legitimate to do this. This is validating that the given requirements, the validators are going to do what they need to do. Validators replied at the pipeline level, so they're applied before we call the actual command handler. So yeah, so now we need to do that there. Creating a team and no projects are associated. Right, let's be clear about that. So associated projects. Increase the readability. We can label the properties going into the record. Very clear what we're doing, right? Making sure there's no question as to those parameters. Here, we're going to do an array, but we're going to give it a value. So associated projects is an array of project identifier. So we are passing in one this time. Now let's run, and we should still have our failing test, but we should now at least be building, and it's failing in the same way. Go into our create team handler, and now when we create a team, right? Is it the right time to associate projects? Probably not. I think we need to make that an explicit piece anyway, because then we might actually want to do an event off of that later. So if all we modify is those, I'm thinking far enough ahead that I probably don't need to concern myself with the eventing right this second, but I do know that edit is happening right on the tails of this planning item. So, all right in the tails of this requirement is coming edit. So there's no benefit in trying to write a bunch of code that I know. Oh, this is new. That's cool. I haven't noticed that before. Maybe I turned on a setting. Awesome. So there's some benefit in doing a little bit of preparation for that, and some benefit in not. And ultimately, what we're going to do is here we're going to start rearranging this the same way we've done other things in the past, in the near past. I'm going to create a new file, team.behaviors. .cs. That's going to be a public partial class team. We're going to make this now a partial. So now we have this. We're going to take create and move that out to behaviors. We're going to import these things. Import partial class team. What am I breaking? Oh, you need this because I created it as a file. Brain. I created it as a file and didn't think about it. If I had created it as a class, it created me the namespace, but because I get messed up with the names. So then we're just going to drag that up there, which then gives us the nesting. So now our behaviors are there. I might actually consider doing that with validators. From an organizational perspective, it's subtle, but it does mean that you don't have to worry too much about the organization. However, readability, it does hide it because by default it's nested, right? So if you're coming into the code base, you've got to know that you can expand those things to know that they are there. But the idea is that the behavior file and the actual core data is separated so that we can kind of keep things cleaner, right? Um, yeah, I'm not going to go into this. That's interesting. One test failed. Oh, I know why it's there, because I've got continuous testing enabled. It's constantly running it. That's cool. Okay. I was demonstrating that that's possible, but I haven't used it before. To someone yesterday. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a method called copy from somewhere else, because it's quicker and we're almost out of time. Updating user, assign user to team. So if you see associate teams, this is almost identical, right? So we're going to take that and go over here. Actually, we should probably put that below the create. The create should be the first one in there. Associate projects, project identifiers. We don't need that right this second, so we're not going to worry about it. That associated projects. Project identifier. Associated projects. Project identifier. So see the pattern. Team project, a team associated project. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Project to add. Project identifier. Projects to remove. So I did team ID here. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, because we got the ID. We got our ID. And then we're not going to do any domain events yet, so that's fine. So now we have our associate projects. The one downside to that is that it's not just associate projects, is align projects with whatever we're passing, but again, a pattern for later. So in here now, we call command.associated projects, right? We should have a little bit of a difference in testing. I'm not saying it'll work, but we should have a little bit of a difference. There we go. Have success. So, oh. So we are able to associate, that validates that we are associating that project. We are, and I know I copied and pasted, but that's fine. We've got an associated project. The project identifier on that matches. And we created our domain event still, and that we have a team is created with associated projects. That's the difference in the different create, right? So we're calling create, and we're saying that we have associated projects. What I should do here is P goes to P dot project identifier equals that, and P dot ID team ID equals team.id. I don't know if we necessarily handle that piece. It's not null. So it should do or default. I think that'll work. trying to make sure I'm validating that case. Now, I think that ID is 0. Let's see. Private read only. And I really should be thinking these through a bit more. So when I do add async, I should be doing can you not set that? Oh no. No, I can't do that. That's interesting. That's working because they're 0. There's a frustrating little side effect there. Okay. However, that is my time, unfortunately. So we are going to raid out. Who did we raid last week? We raided, I think, Fullbots last. I don't know of any other app developers streaming. So we are going to raid into Anna. Anna is a talented C# developer working currently on a writer's platform, building a whole markdown editor, etc. Anna's a very talented developer. And she's been developing many projects, but seems to like challenges. So building up from scratch is a talent of hers. So we're going to raid over. I will be back tomorrow. Yeah, Anna is a great place. Wow, it treats Quack as bullying. So sorry, AJ. OneLine also streams .NET development. If you're interested in .NET development, I highly recommend checking out OneLine streams. He streams Wednesday through Friday and is a very talented developer building many different actual work projects on stream. So if you like the idea of seeing real development, yeah, I know. It determined Quack was offensive and flagged it as bullying. Oh, there you go. Actually, I know what you mean by Quack. So, but yeah, thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging out. Again, if you want to chat more about stuff, yeah, I'm more than welcome to. There is a Discord attached to the stream. I'm always open to questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing. But for now, let's go raid Anna, and I will see you again tomorrow, hopefully. Thank you for joining me. Take care, all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.